Good evening, everyone. This week's parasha is Parashas Devarim, Tavshin Pei, Shabbos Chazayin, the Shabbos preceding Tisha B'Av. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people, Eicha esa lavadi, how can I carry this on my own? How can I carry on my own tarchachem, your troubles, masa'achem, your burdens, v'rivchem, and your quarrels? Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about how the traditional system of the Jewish people developed, because originally all judgments were taken care of by Moshe on his own. But eventually, as the way it's recorded in Parashas Yisro previously, it's Yisro pointing out to him this is too much. Here we find Moshe Rabbeinu also bemoaning how big a job it was. Where he said, how can I carry on my own your burdens, your troubles, your burdens, and your quarrels. And after that, Moshe says, he tells the Jewish people, appoint judges, bring forth people who could be judges. And they say, this is a good matter, this is a good thing to do. On Tisha B'Av, one of the five Megillas, one of the five scrolls that we read during the year is Eicha, which in English we call Lamentations, which was written by the prophet Jeremiah, bemoaning the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Holy Temple. And the Medrash at Eicha tells us that we find three prophets using this word Eicha, which means how. Eicha, we find that the book of Eicha starts, Eicha Yashva Badad Ha'ira Basi'am. How does she sit alone, desolate, the city that was so full of people? That's the first verse, the first words of the book of Eicha, the book of Lamentations. So the Medrash says on those words, Shloishin is Abu B'Lashon Eicha. There are three people who prophesied using this word Eicha. How? Alas. Moshe, Yeshaya, Yirmiyah. Moshe used it, Yeshaya, Isaiah used it, Yirmiyah and Jeremiah used it. Moshe Amar Eicha Esa Lavadi. Moshe said, what we have in our parasha, Eicha Esa Lavadi, how can I carry on my own your troubles, your burdens, your quarrels? Yeshaya Amar, Isaiah said, which is the Haftarah from this week, this coming Shabbos, Eicha Esa Lazaina, how she become like a wayward woman, talking about the sinfulness of Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem. Yirmiyah Amar, Yirmiyah said, Eicha Yashva Badad, how does she sit desolate? Amar Rabbi Levi, the sage Rabbi Levi said, Mashal Lamatroina Shayala Shloisha Shushvinin, a woman of nobility, who had three people who served her. Echaroisa B'Shavasa, one of them observed her in her tranquility. And one saw her in her troubling time. And one saw her in her disgrace. Kach, Moshe saw them in their time of glory and tranquility in the desert. And he said, how can I carry your burdens? Things were going on in the Jewish people. They had questions and they had disputes. No, life was going on. There was life. Yeshaya saw them in their time of trouble, in their time of disturbance, of lack of tranquility. How do Yerushalayim and Jewish people become like a wayward woman? He saw them in their troubled times. Jeremiah saw them in their state of disgrace. And he said, how does she sit desolate? So three prophets using the same word and prophesying over the same people at three stages of their nationhood. What is the point of this? What is the point of saying that these three prophets prophesies with the same word. Clearly, it's trying to make some kind of a connection. And what is that connection? So I'd like to share with you an explanation that's based on the Sefer Ner Uziel from Rabbi Uziel Malevsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. So let's look at what happened to what Moshe said in our parsha. And he says, Eicha esa lavadi, how could I carry this burden alone? So what was happening? What was happening was the Jewish people, again, any kind of issues, disputes, straight to Moshe. And they're lining up in long lines to be able to do it. And Yisro said to Moshe, too much for them, too much for you. But what was the original plan? What was meant to be when Moshe started that way? And the answer is that it's pretty clear that the original plan was for the Bnei Yisrael to study and receive direction directly from Moshe. Not through someone else. What better way to study Torah? What better way to get direction than from Moshe himself? That would be the best way to do things. But the workload that was developing upon Moshe made him realize something. Had the Jewish people been at the spiritual level that they should be at, striving to be close to Hashem, striving to be true servants of Hashem, then there wouldn't be so many disputes amongst them that need to be settled. In a state where the Jewish people are truly striving to be dedicated to Hashem, they'd have issues, but the amount of issues that have to be dealt with, Moshe could handle on his own. And the Jewish people would benefit tremendously from the direct connection with Moshe himself. But Moshe saw that this direct connection was affecting him the way it should. Rashi comments when Moshe says the three things, how could I carry on my own your troubles, your burdens, and your quarrels? What did Tar Chachem refer to? What it means your troubles. Yisrael Tar Chanim. Teaches us the Jewish people used to make things very difficult for Moshe. If let's say two people have a dispute coming from Moshe, and one of the disputants realizes, I'm not doing well here. What does he do? So he starts using whatever he can to try to push things off, to delay things. I have more judges. I have more proofs. Let's get more judges involved. To some degree, this was going on. Tar Chanim, they were causing trouble. When they came in front of Moshe for a dispute, it was clear to Moshe that perhaps this means he saw in them that they wanted to do whatever they can just to avoid losing the case. That's Tar Chachem. What's Umasa Achem and your loads, your burdens? And this, let me show you Apikarsin. Now you had other kinds of troublemakers, people who really spoke derogatorily of Moshe Rabbeinu himself, who are called Apikarsin, heretics. Hikde Moshe Lotzes. If Moshe came out earlier than usual from his tent to come and deal with the Jewish people, Amru Ma'arab and Amram Lotzes. How come the son of Amram left his house early? Maybe, him and his wife aren't getting along so well. So he got out as soon as he could. And if let's say he left his tent later than usual, what's taking him so long to come out? What do you think? He was busy making plans to make things difficult for you. That's the loads. That's the kinds of things that Moshe Rabbeinu, Rashi brings down for the Medrash he had to go through. Was it was everybody doing this? Not necessarily, but there were some people doing this, which was a sign of the spiritual state of the Jewish people. And the last of Rivchem and your quarrels, show you Reganim, teaches us that Jewish people can start fighting with each other a lot. So Moshe Rabbeinu is looking at the Jewish people, looking at all the effort he's investing for them to have direct contact. Doesn't seem to be working. And if it's not working, then he should slow down. Then it is a very big load to be carrying if it's not accomplishing what it should be accomplishing. But Moshe Rabbeinu realized how important, how beneficial it was for the Jewish people to have direct contact from him, with him, and therefore he gave it one more try. He gave it a shot. Let's see what happens. So he says to the Jewish people, I said to you, how can I carry myself this burden? Pick from each of your tribes men who are wise, discerning, and experienced, and I will appoint them as your heads. Okay. Vatanu Oisi, and you responded to me, said Moshe. Vatemru, and you said, what you're proposing is good. That was their response. So Rashi comments, when you decided that this is a good thing to do, you did it for your benefit, for your own personal benefit. You should have responded, Moshe Rabbeinu, our master, our teacher Moshe, who's the better to learn from? From you or from your students? Of course it's better to study from you. You worked so hard. You gave up so much for it. That's what you should have answered, Moshe said. But I knew what was going on in your minds. It was going on in your minds that, it'll be easier to deal with other people than to have to deal with Moshe. It'll be easier to have to deal with judges that aren't at the same level of Moshe when we have to deal with disputes. It'll work out better for us. So Moshe, when he proposed the idea, he wanted to see that maybe deep down, they really wanted that connection. So he said to them, you know what? I can't carry this burden. Bring judges. But that was really a test to see what would they say. Would they say, of course not, we want the connection. And if they wanted the connection, then there was hope to bring them up through that connection, and Moshe would continue. It didn't happen. They said to him, yeah, Taka, it's a good idea. We should do it this way. And the fact that they gave up on that connection to Moshe showed that they were looking for the easier way out. That's what they were looking for, the easier way out. Of course, we're talking about the people in the generation of the desert. They were great people on a level that we don't necessarily have full understanding of. Yes, I know they were just slaves. They used to just be slaves, but these were not your typical people like us. Nonetheless, at some level, this was the issue. This was what happening to them. And therefore, Moshe said, Eicha. Moshe's Eicha was, alas, the fact that at last I can't carry alone these burdens. It's a tragedy that I can't carry it, because it means that you're not striving to be true servants of Hashem. Because if you were, I'd be able to handle this load. Because if you were, then that means that the direct connection from me to you is working, it's worthwhile, it's beneficial to you, and therefore it's worth doing. But alas, it's not happening. That lack of dedication on the part of the ancestor of the Jewish people in the desert, that lack of striving to be as close to Hashem as we can, and having that be part of our whole focus in life, it didn't stay there. It didn't stay in that generation alone. It's something that lingered into future generations. And that lack of dedication, that lack of striving, that lack of yearning for closest to Hashem at the highest level possible, turned eventually into an attitude of Eicha Yisrael. Yeshaya says, how did they become such wayward people? How did it happen? It started from the first Eicha. It started from the first point where they didn't have that yearning for close to Hashem that you should have. Eventually, as time went on through generations, that trait turned into a trait of abandoning, of giving it up. And eventually, that brought about the destruction of the Jewish people in the Beis HaMikdash, where Yirmiyah said, Eicha Yashva Badad. How does she now sit alone and desolate? That is the connection between these three things. The Eicha that Moshe cried over the lack of the Jewish people's true striving and yearning close to Hashem eventually developed into an attitude of being wayward from Hashem in the times of Yeshaya, which led to their destruction and desolation. Their Yirmiyah bemoaned when he said, Eicha Yashva Badad, how do they sit alone? Now, on this point, the Jewish people at some level are looking for an easy way out. I want to start off with a little story I one time read. And the story goes of these two really simple people, and they're reading a newspaper article. And one of them looks at the article and he goes, this article is talking about these people, they call them rabbis, rabbis? I never heard of rabbis. What are rabbis? The other friend says, oh, that's a Jewish disease. Now, unfortunately, that is sometimes an attitude that people have at some level. And a lot of times people think, let's say a lot of times, there are times where people think the rabbis, they're out to get us. They just make things stricter and stricter and stricter. Why do they have to be so strict? Why do they have to make these decisions that make things so difficult for us? So the tendency seems to be to label the rabbis the machmir, the rabbis the strict one, and he's overdoing it. He's the fanatic. The real question is that when we say that, and we all say it in different levels, are we really wondering why they're so strict? Or are we really saying that we're looking for the easier way out? We want the easier way. We don't want that pressure. The Jewish people didn't want the pressure of Moshe. You know, if you're learning directly from Moshe, that puts a big pressure on you to live up to the ideals that Moshe wants, which is to make you strive to be greater and greater. That's Moshe. Jewish people don't want that pressure. They want the student won't be as hard, won't be as difficult. Maybe we'll even be able to get them, to convince them to come on our side to some degree. But that's what was happening by the Jewish people at some level, and we have to wonder, does that happen to us sometimes also? Are we looking for the easier way out? We always need to be growing. We always need to be striving to reach greater and greater heights in the service of Hashem. Otherwise, we can go from a lackadaisical attitude to a not caring attitude. We can be lackadaisical about our service to Hashem and our growth, and then we can develop into not caring about our growth. And from not caring, chas v'shalom, it can turn into not observing. And not observing turns into destruction. As we approach Tisha B'Av and we mourn over the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, what are we mourning for? What are we mourning over? We're mourning over the closeness to Hashem that we had when we had the Beis HaMikdash. When we had the Beis HaMikdash, our connection, our ability to be close and to connect to Hashem was at a level that's beyond our comprehension. And when we mourn the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, it means we mourn the loss of that connection, of that relationship. And really, the more we work towards developing our relationship with Hashem, the more possible it is to mourn over the Beis HaMikdash, which would create a relationship with Hashem that would be the greatest that we could even imagine. And therefore, now is the time to think about what are our goals in life? What are we striving for? What do we yearn for? Are we yearning to be close to Hashem as much as possible? Or are we looking for the easy way out? And the more that we work towards realizing that our goal in life is to become closer and closer to Hashem, to reach greater levels in Torah and mitzvahs, and again, in closeness to Hashem and a relationship to Hashem, the more we internalize that, the more that becomes part of our life, and the more that we realize how much we've lost in the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. May we inspire ourselves this Shabbos to bring ourselves to understand what life's about, what should be our goals in life, what we should be striving for in life, how much the greatest thing in life that we can attain is closest to Hashem, and we can attain that and feel that in our lives, and hope and pray that we should reach the greatest closest to Hashem that we could attain, the coming of Mashiach and the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, and Heirav Yameinu Amen. Have a wonderful Shabbos.